Yep. Okay. So in problem number 6 of your sample final, it's going to ask you to use a sum or difference formula for either sine or cosine. So essentially, you're going to have to use one of these four formulas. You have sine of A plus B is equal to sine of A times cosine of B plus cosine of A times sine of B. Sine of A minus B is very similar. It has the minus sign in between, right? So it's sine of A times cosine of B minus cosine of A times sine of B. If I'm going to do cosine of A plus B, notice that you multiply the two cosine terms together, followed by the two sine terms, right? So cosine A times cosine B, sine of A times sine of B. But notice that when we have addition, the addition rule for cosine, it turns negative. If you have a negative for the difference for cosine, then you should have addition in the formula when you expand it. Okay. So you have these four formulas, and essentially what they're going to give you is either the value of A or B, right? So when you're going to verify the identity, what you'll have is that A or B is going to be a quadrantal angle, right? It should be an angle that's typically from 0 to 2 pi. But more importantly, it's going to be a multiple of 90 degrees, right? So we can have an angle of 0 pi. They can give you an angle of pi over 2. They can give you an angle of pi. They can give you an angle of 3 pi over 2 and an angle of 2 pi. Now, all you have to do is just remember the coordinates of these angles, right? So for the first point, 0 pi and 2 pi, you have the coordinates 1 comma 0. At pi over 2, you got 0 comma 1. At pi, you got negative 1, 0. And at 3 pi over 2, you got 0, negative 1. And from your unit circle, you know that sine of any angle theta is always equal to the y coordinate, and cosine of any angle is equal to the x coordinate. Okay, so when you're going to take your final exam for Math 108, I think the first thing that you should do is just draw this picture, right? There's a couple of things that I recommend, one of them being drawing this picture, because you'll use it for a lot of the problems. Okay, so let's see how this works. For problem 6 now, it states, state the formula for cosine of A plus B and use it to prove that cosine of A plus pi is precisely negative cosine of A. So cosine of A plus B by the formula is going to be cosine of A times cosine of B. But because there's addition here in the sum, you write it as a minus when you expand it. So it's minus sine of A, sine of B. Now, we want to show that cosine of A plus pi is equal to negative cosine of A. Essentially, what I'm going to do is expand this left-hand side of the equation. And ultimately, I want to show that it's equal to the right-hand side. Okay, so I'm starting with cosine of A plus pi, and I want to end with negative cos A. So this is how it works. By your sum formula for cosine, give me 1 second, I'm recording. If I expand this, cosine of A plus pi, you have cosine of A times cosine of pi. So the pi is replacing the B. Minus sine of A times sine of B. Or sine of pi, rather. Okay. Now, what I know is that cosine of pi and sine of pi, I can evaluate it from the unit circle. At pi, you have the coordinates negative 1, 0. Cosine of theta is always equal to x. So cosine of pi is negative 1. So this is equal to cosine of A times -1 minus sine of A times sine of pi, which is 0. So this would give us 0 here. That goes away. -1 times cosine of A is negative cos A. That's exactly what I end with. And we're done.